Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies 2023 Distinguished Alumni Lecture. My name is Ann Hayner, Associate Director for Alumni Relations at the Kroc Institute. We acknowledge, first of all, the Kroc Institute's presence on the traditional homelands of Native people, including the Haudenosaunee, Miami, Peoria, and particularly the Pokagon Potawatomi, who have been using this land for thousands of years and continue to do so. We recognize our own place in the story and practices of colonialism and understand that our responsibilities extend beyond this gesture of land acknowledgement. We must also reflect on the University of Notre Dame's past, present, and future relationship with the original stewards of this land and actively pursue ways to amend this troubled relationship. We also note that a land acknowledgement could be meaningless if it's not accompanied by active work to address the structural injustice and violence perpetrated against Indigenous people around the globe, both historically and currently. The Kroc Institute is committed to working to address these harms and to find ways to contribute to constructive transformation through our teaching, research, and peacebuilding efforts. We hope that our celebration today will honor the traditions of these Native peoples as we recognize a guest whose work is committed to justice, reconciliation, and peace building across divides of religion, ethnicity, and gender. At the Kroc Institute, we are constantly aware of the accomplishments and fascinating career paths of our alumni, which are a chief source of our pride. Since 1987, when the first 4 undergraduate students were awarded a concentration in peace studies, the Kroc Institute has graduated over 1,900 alumni. This includes over 1,200 from what is now the undergraduate major or minor in peace studies, over 700 alumni of the master's program, and 38 from our doctoral program in peace studies. After 35 years, our alumni are now at work in over 100 countries around the world. Kroc Institute alumni have found a variety of ways to integrate peace studies into their professional work. Some identify as professional peace builders, while others have found ways to incorporate the knowledge and values of peace studies in a variety of distinct professions, from religious leadership to teaching, from journalism to parenting. The Kroc Institute's Distinguished Alumni Award honors graduates of Notre Dame's Peace Studies program whose careers and lives exemplify the ideals of peace building across the globe. In the past, we have honored Kenyan NGO leader George Wachira, development innovator Molly Kinder, educator and activist Carsonia Wise-Whitehead of Baltimore, human rights lawyers and advocates, including Shabi Aguirre of the International Criminal Court, Vienna Colucci of Amnesty International, and Adriana Quiñones of UN Women. Ambassador Juana Popa of Romania. Chinese filmmaker Jen Yi. Nigerian journalist Obi Anyadike. Theater director and writer P. Carl. Scholar practitioner Bina DaCosta. And Valerie Hickey, most recently Global Director for Environment, Natural Resources, and the Blue Economy at the World Bank. To this list of distinguished alumni, we are now privileged to add Myla Leguro, Technical Advisor for Social Cohesion and Church Engagement at Catholic Relief Services in the Philippines and founder of the Mindanao Peacebuilding Institute. I now invite Jerry Powers, Director of the Catholic Peacebuilding Studies at the Kroc Institute and coordinator of the Catholic Peacebuilding Network, to introduce our 2023 Distinguished Alumni Award winner.
Thank you, Ann, and welcome everyone. We are delighted to welcome Myla Leguro back to Notre Dame. Myla said to keep it short, but I take that as an idealistic hope on her part, not a realistic expectation. She deserves more than short. This is the annual alumni lecture, so let's start with that part. Even if it wasn't, Myla's start in peacebuilding. Myla's a double domer. Nothing special about that, except that I'm pretty sure she's the only double domer who started as a visiting faculty fellow and only later came back as a student. Start by faculty, later student. 2006, Myla was the first Catholic Relief Services Kroc Institute visiting fellow. She spent 3 months here documenting CRS's peacebuilding work in Mindanao, and that contributed to the publication a year later of the Reflective Peacebuilding Toolkit, a joint publication of the Kroc Institute and CRS. In 2008, she came back to Kroc, having not gotten enough, as a full-time MA student. As a student, she participated in an innovative and new program that we had just started of a peacebuilding apprenticeship that was led by John Paul Lederach, somebody with whom she had worked since the mid-1990s. We at Kroc keep hoping that someday one of our alums are going to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Because we want to take full credit. In Myla's case, however, a year before she first began bleeding blue and gold, she was one of 1,000 women peace builders from around the world who were nominated as a group for the Nobel. And Myla was among that elite group of women because she has been engaged in peace building in her native Mindanao in the southern Philippines since she was 17 years old. I won't tell you what I was doing at 17, but it wasn't peace building. Mindanao has suffered from a complex set of conflicts that have been going on for 50, 100, or 500 years, depending upon who you ask. Myla has worked for CRS since 1991, and since 1997, she has been a peacebuilding specialist. She has worked mostly in Mindanao, but also has done stints in East Timor and for a global program of Catholic Relief Services. She has been involved in virtually every major civil society peacebuilding initiative in Mindanao. One of the most significant is the Mindanao Peacebuilding Institute, which Myla helped found in 2000 and for which she still serves as board president. MPI is the most important peace institute in the region, training some 2,000 peace builders from throughout Asia, and has been so successful that the Philippines military in Mindanao worked with Myla and others at the Institute to incorporate peacebuilding as part of their standard training, and not only that, but as part of their standard operational doctrine. A woman who understands the power of institutions, she has also helped start and is the lead convener of Peace Weavers, a network of the 7 largest civil society peacebuilding organizations in Mindanao. About a decade ago, Myla developed an innovative peacebuilding program to deal with conflicts over land rights at the local level. That program was so successful that it became a model for CRS's peacebuilding programs throughout the world. As one of the most respected of CRS's many incredible peace builders, from 2016 to 2018, Myla led CRS's global program on advancing interreligious peace building. And one of the local leaders of that project was Myla's roommate at the Kroc Institute, Shamsia Ramadan from Kenya. Myla is now working on a variety of projects related to civil society engagement in implementing the peace accord between the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the Filipino government. One of these projects is an innovative civil society monitoring program that is being done with the Kroc Institute's Peace Accord Matrix. Since 2004, Myla has also served as mentor and host to 23 Kroc master's students in their field placements in Mindanao, which is more than any other field site that Kroc has. Also, since 2004, Myla has played a leading role in the Catholic Peacebuilding Network, which I coordinate. CPN has worked closely with CRS and the Catholic bishops of Mindanao on a range of peacebuilding initiatives. As an exercise in humility, I once went with Myla to a rural village in the mountains of Mindanao and watched her moderate a sometimes heated meeting about local conflicts, moving seamlessly between 4 languages. Several years ago, Scott Appleby, the dean of the Keough School, and I joined Myla and Deng Guiguento for a 2-day strategic planning session for the Catholic bishops of Mindanao that Myla and Deng had organized and moderated. In that session, the bishops, all of whom were veteran peace builders, agreed to a number of proposals for future peacebuilding initiatives. It was a strategic planning event. So a few months later, I was at a conference of religious peace builders in Europe, And I had breakfast with the Mindanao Archbishop, who is designated as the bishop to implement the initiatives that they had talked about in our meeting. So we discussed each of the proposed initiatives in turn. And after each one, the Archbishop said, "You know, Jerry, I'm not exactly sure how to proceed. Why don't you talk to Myla, and the bishops will do whatever she says." And that's the way peacebuilding often works. Women like Myla are often the mostly unseen and unheralded peace builders making things happen. Myla has the expertise, the well-earned respect, the accompaniment and leadership skills, the patient persistence, and the commitment needed to make a real difference over the long, hard road that is peace building amidst intractable conflicts like that in Mindanao. So it's a real pleasure to be part of giving her the recognition that she so richly deserves for her many decades of effective peace building. Welcome, Myla.
Myla, we would invite you up on the stage with us. Myla, we are honored to welcome you back to the Kroc Institute to address the topic, harnessing the power of women in peace building, and to present with you a symbol of our respect. The Kroc Institute is proud to recognize your dedication to working for a more just and peaceful world through your lifelong commitment to peace building across religions and cultures in your native Mindanao and throughout the world. Your decades of work with Catholic Relief Services, your founding role in the Mindanao Peacebuilding Institute, and mentoring of young people have laid a strong foundation for the future of peace building. We're honored to confer on you the Distinguished Alumni Award of the Kroc Institute. As inscribed on the base of the award, we are confident you will go forth in peace. Congratulations and welcome back to the Kroc Institute and Notre Dame.
It is indeed a great pleasure to be back and to be back with such a recognition. I'm so humbled of this recognition of the work that I do as a peace builder. It's really just part of my everyday engagement of peace building and justice in Mindanao. So I'm deeply honored to be given this recognition today as a Kroc alumni. Kroc has been part of my journey as a Mindanaoan peace builder. Even before I came to Kroc as a master student in 2008 to 2010, Kroc as an institution and as a community of peace builders have provided support in many creative and innovative initiatives in Mindanao. So from the exploration of the internship program for master students, learning process that brought together scholars and practitioners to strengthen monitoring and evaluation and peace building, accompaniment to the Bangsamoro peace process, efforts to increase capacities and commitment of religious leaders as peace process and peace building actors, and lots of reflections and research on civil society engagement. It is through this real life, on the ground engagement that I have come to appreciate the importance of strategic peace building, which I learned at Kroc. It emphasizes complementary and interweaving efforts on structural and institutional change, justice and healing, violence prevention, conflict response, and transformation. Kroc highlights the importance of strategic engagement at all levels of society to sustain peace. It emphasizes the importance of harmonizing peace-building work on the ground and strategic influence work with decision makers and power brokers. My current work on advancing the inclusion of women in peace processes and political decision-making is strategic and intentional on connecting change from the individual to relationships, the community, and structures and systems. The barriers and opportunities for women engagement in peace processes, either formal or informal, then are still relevant until now. But I am inspired with the many creative ways that women in Mindanao, in the Bangsamoro, are navigating power and influence to advance their meaningful participation and leadership within the context of the political transition and normalization within the Bangsamoro Peace Agreement. More than a decade after the historic passing of the United Nations Security Council 1325 on women, peace, and security, meaningful participation and inclusion of women in formal peace processes remain to be a persistent challenge. Based on the research of the Council for Foreign Relations, between 1992 and 2019, women constituted on average 13% of negotiators, 6% of mediators, and 6% of signatories in major peace processes around the world. This reality exists even with the growing evidence on the importance of women inclusion and participation in improving outcomes before, during, and after conflict, and ensuring success in peace process implementation. But while women have minimal participation at the formal peace tables, women are actively leading peace-building efforts at the civil society and grassroots levels. Bolding names as women's inventions, the creative peace-building strategies of women born of their location outside of public decisions. Women explore and maximize entry points which are accessible to their own context and situation, often through their socially accepted roles and their personal and communal relationships. The types of peace-building initiatives can range from addressing survival and basic needs to conflict resolution, advocacy, local decision-making and leadership processes, community rebuilding, trauma healing and reconciliation, relationship building, reducing direct violence, conflict prevention, building capacity, and organizing and building coalitions. Women's peace-building work has promoted the increase in the number as well as capacities of women organizations. It has fostered changes in peace processes and dialogues, although behind the scenes, and has often enhanced the status of women. Understanding the full potential, the unique standpoint, the strategic value and contributions of women as peace actors, there is a need to reframe the definition of peace building to work towards the strategic inclusion of women. Porter highlights this definition. Peace building itself needs to be understood broadly as a process that encompasses pre-conflict, conflict, and post-accord transformation in both formal and informal settings. This definition of peace building supports the importance of women participation in improving outcomes before, during, and after conflict. Women peace building springs forth from the conceptions of peace that reach for basic needs of food, shelter, education, freedom from violence at the home front and battlefront, economic development, human rights and women's rights, full participation and engagement of community building, and human security. Sheila May Villarreal is a Teduray woman leader who I work with in Mindanao. She is from the area called South UP, and she is a key leader in the South UP Women's Federation. She dreams of seeing her community prosper and develop socially and economically. Shelley thinks that improvements such as proper farm-to-market road, communications, infrastructure, clean and accessible energy, and regular peacebuilding initiatives for their community will make a huge difference. This will enable their people, the indigenous people, particularly women, to access opportunities that will help improve their lives. It is important to continue advocating for participation of women in both formal peace negotiations, but at the same time, there's a need to recognize and support women's civil society and grassroots contributions to peace building. Women's empowerment is an important condition that would prevent conflict and a condition that would facilitate the success of peace building efforts. As women are excluded from decision-making and leadership opportunities, it is important to support initiatives that empower women to harness their capacities and talents in peace building. Empowerment is a process of awareness and capacity strengthening that leads to greater participation and decision-making power. It enables women to take control over their lives, set their own agendas, build self-confidence, solve problems, and develop self-reliance. It also involves the ability to make choices as well as to define what choices are offered. Empowerment needs to harness both the individual and collective power of women by building critical understanding of one's reality, feeling of self-esteem, political awareness, and the economic capacity to generate independent income. Self-empowerment and consequent collective action towards peace building needs to be grounded on nurturing women's internal resources of strength and transformative power, as well as fostering external resources of support. Organizing and strengthening women's organization, as I have encountered in Mindanao, is becoming a platform that bolsters women's collective power to initiate peace actions, and not just initiate peace actions, but really influence decision-making, not only at the political sphere, but in many spheres in the communities. It is important that women empowerment processes for peace need to bring women's informal peace politics into formal politics. This process entails harnessing women's myriad of spontaneous actions for peace and facilitate access to resources which will enable women to negotiate the formal structures of power. At 23 years old, another young woman that I work with, Rasmia Sanang, she is a brilliant young woman leader full of potential. She has a strong sense of leadership and deeply cares about her community. She is the chairperson of the United Tribes Women Federation in the area called Special Geographic Area of the Bangsamoro region. Through series of political leadership trainings and conversations about barriers why women are not able to engage at the political level, Rasmia shared that one of the best things that came out from all of these processes was seeing how fellow women leaders gain the confidence to now run for a formal leadership position at the village level. Hand in hand with her other women leaders and friends, Rasmia is set to run for office in this year's village level elections. And we are hoping that she will win and really bring the agenda of the women in governance in her community. In my work at CRS, we are using the socio-ecological model for empowerment to demonstrate how we can address deeply rooted norms and behaviors to bring about transformational change by working at many levels. As I've already mentioned, It's a focus on working at the individual level, looking at how relations are going to be transformed so that it becomes right relationships, especially for women. Right relationships also entail work at the household level. There's also a need to act with communities to recognize and change harmful norms at the wider societal level, which could include addressing policies or the same norms, but on a wider scale. It's a very difficult process. But women are patient. Women are actually moving forward. To be able to harness the power of women in peace building, it is important to recognize women's activity as peace builders to ensure inclusion of women in all stages of peace building, both their visible formal roles and their behind the scenes informal work. And there are a lot of behind the scenes informal work. In the context of higher level peace process, especially in the context of the Philippines, women peace builders acted as honest brokers to build trust between negotiating parties. Our women negotiators in the peace process were able to bridge relationship within the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the government. Women as active peace constituency advocated for agenda of marginalized groups, mobilized public support, and stage peace actions to pressure parties to continue talks, especially when negotiations are stalled. Women are also actively engaged in mediation and conflict resolution work, but oftentimes these are done outside of the mandated structures because they're not part of the mandated structures. Women's roles as catalysts and their work for preparing the ground for dialogue, conflict resolution, are often the invisible aspects of their peace-building engagement. Their roles as facilitators, mobilizers, healers, inspirers, and as strong members of peace constituency are indeed recognized, yet they still navigate informally and behind the scenes. Women oftentimes are not the visible formal negotiators in reaching the local agreements, but their contributions constitute the critical processes that lead toward participation, strength, and internal community cohesion within communities. It is important to support both formal and informal peace actions of women, especially in connecting relationships, in healing and reconciliation, in mediation, facilitation, and advocacy for peace as community and peace facilitators in the areas. I will end with a positive note. Although the average rate of women's participation in peace processes around the world remain low, Philippines is quite unique in this respect. By the numbers, according to the independent think tank Council of Foreign Relations, women composed 33% of negotiators and 27% of total signatories of the final peace agreement between the MILF and the government. Miriam Coronel Ferrer, head of the government peace panel, remains to be the first and only female chief negotiator in history to sign a peace accord. She deserves a clap. We are proud. Many of prominent women negotiators and leaders in the formal peace process first played key roles in keeping peace on the ground through the organizations and networks they either founded or co-founded and headed, before being recognized at the subnational and eventually national levels. Essential to their recognition as key representatives was not only their expertise in women's issues and rights, but also in the fields of law, ceasefire mechanisms, indigenous rights, community development. Outside of the formal peace table, civil society groups, most especially women peace builders, advocated for the inclusion of grassroots agenda, served as bridge builders when negotiation between parties stalled, led education and awareness campaign to inform communities on progress of the negotiation, and lobbied for enhanced participation of grassroots and civil society in the peace process. With significant engagement of women peace builders within and outside of the formal peace negotiations, and more importantly, the strategic link that women made across the formal and informal, the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro was hailed for its strong provisions on women's rights as well as for women's political, social, and economic participation. In her reflection, and one of my mentors, Irene Santiago, outlined 3 barriers that were overcome in this process. The conceptual barrier that actually highlights or prevents women from engaging in the public sphere, the technical barrier, and the political barrier. So this all resulted to meaningful, substantive participation of women in the peace process. Philippines is also the first country in Southeast Asia and 18th in the world to create a national action plan for the United Nations Security Council 1325. Women organizations work closely with government to craft and implement the national action plan. The group called Women Engaged in Action 1325 is a network of human rights, peace, and women organizations are building this as a forefront of the process. Especially in the current process, we are now writing the next cycle of the National Action Plan. Women organizations provided support to the Bangsamoro regional government to develop a localized regional action plan on women, peace, and security in support of the overarching goal of the peace agreement to work towards sustainable peace and gender equality. Women organizations and civil society groups in Mindanao provide critical support to the Bangsamoro Women Commission in implementing the regional action plan, especially within the context of the impacts of armed conflict, violence, clan warfare, and natural disasters in Mindanao. I inspired with the vision of peace leadership of women in Mindanao, which encompasses social, political, and economic leadership as they endeavor to contribute actively to peace, justice, and development in the region. Through women's energy, creativity, hope, power, practicality, courage, and imagination, sisters will claim their space, expand the peace table, create alternative tables to assert their rights and responsibilities to build peace. Thank you very much.
Now we'll be happy to take questions. If anyone would like, we'll bring the microphone around to you.
So great to see you, Myla. I wonder if you want to share, looking at in retrospect, what was the most challenging moment for you personally in the peace building? I mean, as a peace builder in Mindanao.
Many challenges. My peace building story actually emerged from an incident of violence. And so that in itself is already very challenging to actually grow up during the tail end of the martial law and to witness the atrocities and violence, not only outside of where I am, but really close to where I was living as a teenager. And so that particular experience brought me to the commitment that what is my mission and what can I do to change the situation? So through my young mind, I already formulated, I need to spend my commitment for this and to really see. I really dream of one day Mindanao will become truly peaceful, not only for myself, but also for my friends, my family, and of course, my daughter. So the challenge is, how do you maintain that passion in a situation where you experience frustration and cycles of violence, cycles of situation where you are confronted with that decision. So it really takes an everyday commitment to be able to actually move towards the challenges. But I will say that the challenge that I'm facing cannot compare to the challenges of the women who are actually on the ground. So it's so that is my inspiration. So they continue day by day. For example, I'm working with a group of women now in the area called SPMS box. And despite of the peace agreement, there's actually conflict hotspots in Mindanao. And these women have been perennially experiencing displacements, experiencing armed encounters in the area. And very recently, we brought them in Cotabato City. It's the center of the Bangsamoro area. And they were all sharing about their experiences. And then they were presenting their products. So even with uncertainty in their everyday life, they're able to produce beautiful bags, beautiful mats. And they were presenting this to the key decision makers. And one of the representatives from government said, it's really good to see the women from the SPMS box, not in the evacuation center, but here. So in terms of challenges, you actually locate yourself in view of what the women are also experiencing, and you're able to push.
Try to make my way back to you. We'll pass. You can speak really loudly too. Oh, no, you know what? We need it for a Zoom on me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for delivering this talk. It was amazing and really inspirational. I wondered if you could talk a few points you mentioned, increasing inclusion of women in more formal spaces, either in more formal political spaces or in more formal peace process spaces. And I wonder if you could talk about any potential obstacles or hazards institutionally that exist when people who have historically been excluded from some spaces begin to come into them, perhaps with an experience deficit, and and the best ways of overcoming those kinds of obstacles as those processes become more inclusive.
Yeah. I think there's we can already make the case that we have lots of laws, mandates, policies, and commitments to actually for women to participate in formal spaces. Like, for example, in the case of the Philippines, notwithstanding the international laws and instruments, the Philippines has a lot of laws saying that women need to engage in the public sphere. And so one of the barriers that women talk about is that they don't know how. They know that there's a law. There are laws actually saying that they would need to be included, but they don't know how. So that's the process of what we have been engaging with the women to actually work with them and build their capacities in political leadership. So starting with building self-confidence, from the very practical things to how they do advocacy, how they actually write policy proposals. So very practical things. And so that would need to be done. But in the case also of the duty bearers, the mandated structures, they also have to be educated. Because while their laws are there, they also do not have either the political will or the understanding and knowledge of laws that it's already there. Women are actually, they need to be engaged for nation building. So the work is really balancing of like empowering the women, working with the women, building their capacities, their organizations. But also, we've been finding out that we need to also work with government, mostly male leaders, male political leaders, to make them understand that it's actually their duty to open up that space for women, not only because it's set in the law, but it's because when women bring their perspective, their experience, their suggestions, government programs and projects become more comprehensive and sustainable. And so part of what we're doing is really building that enabling environment. And also making sure that this is the complaint of the women that, we have gone through a lot of trainings, but we never have the chance actually to apply this because we are never given the space. So there's always that balancing act, and that is the critical role of the accompanier, to be able to really accompany the women and not leave them, but to work with them in terms of claiming that space, asserting that space for engagement.
Yes, so we have one question from Zoom from Anna. Worldwide, women are sidelined from decision-making and leadership in part because they are viewed of or thought as limited by their motherhood role. As a mother, how do you, or what advice do you have for mothers to overcome this limitation? Are there ways motherhood has strengthened your peace-building work? And how do we hold that balance of private and public responsibility?
That's actually a gift, being a mother. Because that actually connects you to other mothers, but not saying that if you are not a mother, you are not able to build that network. But it's always looking at ways how you are able to, within your identity, explore ways how you can connect and build on that strength. So one of an indigenous leader that I work with would say, identity is power. So you have confidence. If you know who you are, then you are able to actually engage. Part of the difficulty of being a mother and a peace builder is this issue about guilt, of like you do a lot of work in outside of the home, and we all know that mothers carry that burden. That while we do a lot of community work, public work, we are still expected to do our work in the house, our domestic work, and responsibilities of caring for the family. So it's good to connect that, like bring the gift of caretaking inside the family to caretaking of the community, and to always and again, another woman peace builder said, "Don't ever feel guilty about the work that you're doing. Don't ever feel guilty." So again, you go back to the importance of being in touch with identity and also your decisions.
To you, Anne. Maybe give it to you. There you go.
Thank you, Myla, for the beautiful talk, and also just for all that you've done, not only in the Philippines but around the world, and in engaging with Kroc so deeply and fruitfully this whole time. So I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about the challenges of the coalition building efforts that you've done over the course of your engagement, and because one of the things that's always impressed me so much about peace building in the Philippines is a way that it's just this very diverse, heterogeneous groups of civil society organizations from, not only across religious and ideological, lots of different, crossing all different kinds of diverse lines, and trying to build this broad coalition for peace building. So if you could share with us some of the challenges of building this kind of vibrant but also diverse and heterogeneous these coalitions, including some of the ways that you overcome challenges and talking to each other as well as talking to power holders?
I think the secret is really relationships. So we only do not like working together, but of course with respect that we understand we come from different persuasions, and there's always a space for that. There had been many conversations about differences in understanding and also in position with regards to discussions around power sharing, around ancestral domain, around the territory. And so the platform for that conversation is actually the Mindanao Peace Weavers. And the role there of mostly, again, women who are part of that network is to create that space for engagement and really creating that space and engagement for dialogue and ensuring that we actually respect and understand in terms of where each of the networks is coming from, because each network, they have also their own interest. So it's good to clarify the interests and positions. And in some ways, we actually do negotiate and agree by consensus whether we would make a position, a collective position or stand for a particular issue, or if a particular issue, our role would be more of creating a space to dialogue and educate ourselves. So that is always I think the beauty of the conversation that we've had. And for many of the folks that I'm working with, I've been working with them since 2003 or even before. So there's a long-term embedded engagement. We understand each other. We know each other personally. And then there is an open space for communication. So I think that is the key, to really invest in the relationships and to actually use that as a platform and to be able to open up and also understand that we may not be the decisions that we do or the positions that we actually come up may not be the same for all. So it's okay. We understand as long as we are clear where we are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Myla. So I was struck particularly by the fact that you've been a peace builder since you were 17 years old. And a lot of what we see coming out of youth peace building movements is the struggle to avoid burnout and discouragement and, the changing conditions of the movement as you get older. How is it that you were able to stay engaged, stay hopeful, and stay working for all of those years?
Difficult question. To be honest, I think it's partly because I'm very open to learn and I'm very curious. And I see every day an opportunity to challenge myself and to reflect on where I am located in relation to my work in peace building. And who would not be inspired with all of the many different ways that people that I work with, very creative, they only not bring the creative questions, but sometimes the difficult questions. And it's not always that I love them always. Sometimes I don't like them. So it's part of the journey as a peace builder. And I am so I don't like to really say that because I've been doing this for quite a time that I'm already an expert. No. I always have that open space to learn from people, so that becomes a space to engage and be inspired. But there are days that I'm also down. It's not always that I'm inspired, but I embrace those moments because I understand that, again, as John Paul would say, ebbs and flows of the work that we do.
There we go.
Thank you, Myla. I had a question about more of an environmental standpoint. I do know that like environmental degradation and vulnerability, as much of a problem as it is globally in conflict situations, definitely has its local implications in Mindanao. Climate change making that harder, as we just discussed about heat waves that were occurring in Mindanao. Have you seen or looked at any sort of processes that have helped engage women, former combatants, or the general communities in BARM in any sort of environmental peace building practices? Have you ever seen any of that or heard of any of that in your experience?
The nexus of gender conflict and climate change is talked about now in the circles where I'm engaging, and it's going to be part of the regional action plan on women, peace, and security, because climate change is at our face in the Philippines, where I think not either one or second in terms of vulnerability and risk to natural disasters. And imagine for communities where the SPMS box, which I mentioned a while ago, these are actually communities that are affected by not just movement in terms of armed groups, but also perennial flooding, problems on drought. So they experience both. So one of the ways that we've been working with them is to establish early warning, early response mechanisms that would actually engage women in monitoring not just the conflict incidents, but also issues around disasters. And we're very happy because they've been able to actually set that up. And part of the sustainability that we're looking at is to ensure that when with this women-led early warning, early response mechanisms, we need to actually connect them to the mandated structures such as the government. And then we also recently had a partnership with the Ministry of Public Order and Safety for the Bangsamoro region to actually work with the women organizations. There are about 90, I think, women organizations that we're working with in this area. They're going to become part of the early warning and response of the region. So they're going to be adopted. Again, because we're really looking at sustainability and ensuring that when women are working on the ground, it needs to be connected with policy and influence change. So it needs to be sustained. So that's our approach always. So we're working on that and it's being explored. We're actually, we've been integrating tree planting activities as the solidarity work of women in the area. So I think about 3,000 trees, tree seedlings, and it's not just tree planting; it's tree growing. So we're working with the women on that.
Thank you so much, my sister, for the good work you are doing at the community level. I really relate with you. I also started working before I entered into a classroom of peace building. And so when I entered into that classroom, I said I was going to link theories to practice. Thank you so much. I have one question. I would like to learn from your experience. For a long time in Kenya, we have been working in compartments. Peace builders, psychologists, psychosocial supporters. And it's now we are in the process of coming up with a national framework on integrating mental health, psychosocial support into peace building. How have you done it in Philippines?
In the Philippines.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tekla. Sister. The mental health, psychosocial interventions in the context of Mindanao are also done by peacebuilding organizations, some humanitarian organizations. So there are actually platforms. Again, platforms and coalitions are very powerful in terms of bringing together resources. So there are actually platforms that actually connect the resources that we have. So oftentimes, groups that I work with would provide their own contribution if there are large emergencies that we encounter, and then it's actually a contribution engagement process where each of the organization will bring in what they can contribute in terms of interventions. So I think that it's also sometimes difficult because funding can be a reason for competition, and that's really the reality. Because one advocacy that we're continuing to actually share is that there needs to be more funding for peacebuilding interventions. And we're not getting, so we have a very meager resources for peacebuilding work, and then groups are actually competing. So again, it's important to really talk about it. And always the principle is we bless each other's work, because the work is so huge and enormous that we really need to engage with each other. But there are still hits and misses in that. Sometimes relationships break down because of these issues, but really the concept is to bring together, and then really indeed I recognize that the mental health, psychosocial, trauma healing should be always integrated in the work that we do for peacebuilding.
Thank you, Myla. It's been wonderful to have you back. I have, another question. I've been curious and intrigued by the fact that, and there's really something that's at the bottom of it, that, you started off with Marcos, the dictator Ferdinand, and now you've elected his son. So it appears that there must be some forgiveness, some kind of within the Philippine society, because he was voted in. And I would suspect by large numbers of people who may have suffered under his father, but not holding the son accountable. So there's something about forgiveness, and there's something really hopeful about that story. I'm wondering whether you can maybe share some light onto this fascinating situation.
I'm also curious about that, Professor. So I was talking to Professor Omar's students yesterday, and I was telling them that I could not imagine in my lifetime to see the leaders of a rebel group who rebelled against the father and now working with the son. So can you do a study on that? It's so mind-boggling. So we're also trying to understand, and this process of trying to understand what's happening in terms of decisions, political decisions, in relation to historical past, and the historical past is always bloody. In this case, we've started discussing this, and I've been through finding out that though there are individuals that I was able to have conversation with who actually experience the atrocities during the martial law days and decided to vote for the son. So I was like, where is this coming from? So it's also a question. So is it a pragmatic decision, or is it a decision where because of the sway in terms of popularity? What is it? Because these are actually intelligent and also committed people who have gone through the horrors of martial law and arrive at this decision. So we're continuing to have conversations, and even until now, we're trying to understand that. So good research topic. Help us understand.
That's a research agenda.
Yes, research agenda. But I think there for me is really to find ways how we can leverage on that. But again, be mindful that we're talking about a past that has never been resolved. It has never have any formal transitional justice process, truth-telling process. So how do we actually engage with that? So it's always this dance with the work in peace building. Always have to dance around these issues. And how do we balance do we go for harmony and peace, or look at the justice and accountability concerns? This is, I think, precisely that situation. Serendipity, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Myla, for your leadership and inspiration. I have a question that would ask you to go to reflect a bit on how working from a position with a Christian religious heritage, and whether that is an asset and or liability, or in what ways is it an asset or liability, especially in relating to people, let's say, from an Islamic religious tradition or from other traditions. How do you view that, and what might we learn from your experience in that?
That was my first baptism of fire when I started my engagement with peace building. And so when CRS decided to actually set up the Justice and Peace Reconciliation Program, we actually received a lot of comments, a lot of negativity, because for many years, CRS had been a neutral party, even within the history of martial law, etc. And it was only in 1996 that we said, we want to work on justice. And the wake-up call actually was Rwanda for us, because we were in Rwanda for 3 decades when the genocide happened. And so it became a wake-up call for us to really work on justice concerns. And so I said it's my baptism of fire, because that's when I entered the peace building program, and we had to work with our Muslim counterparts. So I had to actually go to villages, Muslim villages, and I always would receive this mistrust, this doubt, whether I'm there to convert them or whether I'm there to actually bring an agenda on the side of the Christians. And so the principle that we adopted with the team is this principle called presence, that we just went to the communities, established the rapport and relationship, not doing anything, just engage. But we always would go there with our Muslim counterpart. So it's not only us. So it became, in a sense, an expression of solidarity, because we would go to the communities together with our Muslim partners. So that actually helped in terms of establishing the relationship. And when one would need to actually adopt this principle of presence, the important thing is to be humble, the humility. And humility actually is very painful for me, because I had to learn about the history of conflict in Mindanao, of what was the role of the Christian settlers in the 1970s conflict, in the conflict that actually went on years and years before during the settlement programs. So being a Christian, I had to learn that painfully, of that accountability, and to be able to honestly work through that so that I'm able to engage in the real sense through a dialogue process with the Muslims. So it was difficult. It was difficult, but that is part of the exercise, and it goes both ways also. For I'm not saying that we're the only ones, Christians, that go through that experience of understanding and also trying to engage with the past. I'm pretty sure with our Muslim friends, they also go through the same thing. So it's that kind of respect that we bring. So now I'm very proud to say that we are a respected organization, even with Moro Islamic Liberation Front. I have many Muslim friends who I work with, who give me passion, who give me energy and inspiration. Not just Muslims, but also indigenous peoples. So.
Thank you, Myla. Are there any last questions? We do have a reception waiting for us outside, but we could take another question if there's anything lingering that's urgent right now. Okay, great. Thank you. I think you've answered many of them. Thank you very much, Myla.